joy, happiness. I hate them all! I had a really bad day.
He's been like that for a month now. Really? Seems like 3. Hey, you ever gonna get up and try reviewing again? Or, eating?
You ever think that if you died in your sleep, you'd make the world a better place?
Come on, you gotta snap out of it. It wasn't your fault.
Was it? The Merc wouldn't have gone after me if I wasn't weak. Blinded by my hatred and rage. I wasn't in control of anything. What happened to us, guys? This used to be something we were doing for fun. We saw those guys putting up their review shows on the web and thought, hey, that could be a gas to do. And then things just kept getting worse and worse. So many bad shows. The anger just kept building and building until it was doomed to boil over. How can I do angry reviews again knowing that something like that could happen again?
Okay, you had a bad run with some really bad TV shows over this past year. Maybe you need to start off with something easy. Something that's bad, but not really that bad. Ease your way back into it. Trust me, I know you got the strength for this.
That's no small task you're suggesting. I wonder where I could even start. Small wonder.
So yeah, I'd say if there's anything that you guys saw over the stuff my friend showed you over the past few episodes during my absence, it's that television in the 80s was weird. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Remember, my favorite show ever came from this period, and that was about a 3-foot-tall, big-nosed hairball of a space alien that could rival Garfield and Daria in the sarcasm department. The point is, there were quite a few shows of this time that had some pretty strange concepts. And I think one big reason for this was when 2 major outlets, cable and syndication, broke into the mainstream, and thus stations and networks were willing to greenlight just about anything to take up time slots. Which brings us to today's subject, a syndicated children's sitcom from the mid-80s that has probably been a long time coming for a review on this show. This is Small Wonder. Premiering in afternoon syndication in 1985, Small Wonder is one of those shows that 1, I have indeed gotten plenty of requests for, 2, has been placed on a number of lists of worst or at least dumbest shows ever, and 3, one I fully admit to having watched as a kid. USA Today's Robert Bianco listed it as possibly one of the worst shows ever in 2002, and the BBC's Mark Lewison echoed that statement the following year. What was so special about this show, and why does it seem to be so vilified since? Well, you'll see pretty soon, so let's just jump right in. So the pilot episode opens with us being introduced to two members of the Lawson family, the mother Joan and the son Jamie.
I wish I had a brother. I'd even settle for a sister.
Well, maybe one of these days you'll have one.
That's what you keep saying. But I don't think you're really working on it.
We're then also introduced to the annoying kid neighbor, Harriet.
Hi, Jamie. Hi, Harriet.
Jamie, that was rude.
Harriet's a pill and she's nosy. What a waste of womanhood.
Then the father Ted barges in acting all drama queen.
I don't think I'll ask Dad to play with me.
I don't think I will either.
I'll get back to that. Ted is a robotics engineer who's all in this big huff because his superiors weren't interested in his new project.
This.
If that's what he showed his bosses, he's lucky they didn't send him to a psychiatrist.
It's a computerized robot. And honey, this could be invaluable to society. Like it could teach in the schools or in the hospitals to help in therapy for speech-impaired or handicapped children. There are hundreds of practical uses for it.
And take away thousands of jobs from real people. God, let's hope the Koch brothers don't get wind of this. Let's hope Roman Polanski doesn't see this!
Open your eyes and stand up. If I do say so myself, you are fantastic.
I'm fantastic.
I'd like you both to meet Vicky. Say hello to my family.
Hello to my family. Looks like a real girl, Dad. And it feels like a girl.
Oh, yeah, it's a new synthetic material they use for artificial limbs. Just like real skin.
Who'd this guy learn robotics from? Dr. Frankenstein? So yeah, this is the gist of the entire show. A family where the daughter is a life-sized humanoid robot played by Tiffany Brissett.
Ted, you can't keep a child in a cabinet.
Honey, it's not a child. It's an it. It's a machine. It's an android. Here, look. See?
You shouldn't take advantage of a little girl.
Joni, honey, you've got to stop thinking of her as a real child. She's an android, a voice input child identicant, huh?
Actually, there's some pretty damn creepy stuff in this thing if you really think about it. There's a whole bunch of talk, especially in the first few episodes, about Ted's invention possibly leading to robots replacing humans not only at work, but maybe even as family members. And there's no sense of irony. It's actually suggested that it might be a good thing. Was Ted Lawson responsible for whatever post-apocalyptic world we're gonna end up with? So much of the gags on this show involve how Vicky basically has superhuman abilities from being an android, using effects that, well, are about what you'd expect from a syndicated kids show from the 80s, while also mimicking everyone around her.
It's really far out.
Far out.
Honey, do this. Honey, do that. I'm tired of being taken for granted around here. Would you make me some coffee and maybe a piece of toast?
It's honey, do this. Honey, do that. I'm tired of being taken for granted around here.
Though I never understood exactly why she transfers over to a human voice when doing that, when the rest of the time she always talks in that monotone robot voice the character was known for. That voice apparently caused concern among some viewers and probably parent groups that the show was poking fun at people with speech problems. So much so that Tiffany Brissett actually had to appear on a couple of PSAs telling viewers not to poke fun at people who have stuttering or speech impediment problems. So yeah, political correctness issues didn't first emerge at the turn of the century. I do have to admit, it kind of gets a chuckle out of me that while Vicky supposedly doesn't have emotions, Ted somehow did install a sarcasm chip in her.
Vicky, put the silverware down. I meant on the table.
Now you tell me. I will evaluate the problem. Well, what's the answer? Your dad's going to kill you when he finds out?
Who knows? Maybe robots are naturally snarky. They certainly will be in the 31st century. Now, one of the big questions everyone had concerning this show was how could the Lawsons have just explained that a little girl had suddenly up and come into their family? Well, to the show's credit, they did cover that in about the first 10 episodes. At first, they claimed that Vicky was Jamie's out-of-town cousin until the Brindles next door and subsequently the local child services wanted more answers. That eventually led to the Lawsons officially adopting Vicky as their daughter. And so the first step toward the emancipation of androids began. Who knows, in another 400 years, they might even be able to become military officers. Looking back on at least the first couple of seasons, yeah, they weren't really that good. Most of the stories seem to be exclusively about shoving in as much lessons to kids as possible. You know, stuff about the importance of doing your schoolwork, not lying to your parents, the standard after-school special bullcrap. But probably the most frustrating episode for me to watch was when they went with that typical you go girl storyline that just about every show of this time period had. You know, the one where every single male character is portrayed as a chauvinist ass even when there was no hint of them being like that before, and the women turn out to be superior to them in everything.
It's easy when you know how.
They catch the fish and we don't. It's pouring rain on us, and the sun is shining on them. How come, Mr. Lawson?
I think there's only one explanation, Reg.
Yeah?
God is a woman.
Yeah, if episodes like this aired nowadays, the MRAs on Tumblr would have a field day! Other than that, the show for at least the first season or two was mostly about the Lawsons dealing with their annoying neighbors, the Brindles, Brandon, Bonnie, and Harriet, and trying to keep Vicky secret from them, especially because Brandon was Ted's boss.
But I just couldn't think of a way of saying no to the Brindles coming to dinner, short of insulting them.
Honey, there's no way you can insult them. His skin's too thick, and she doesn't stop gabbing long enough to be insulted.
As far as why Ted has to keep her a secret, there's this whole thing about how she's not perfected yet and is thus too susceptible to being reprogrammed. Which they do come up with some storylines in order to drive that home.
If a robot hangs around a human little girl like Harriet, it'll pick up the characteristics of that human little girl.
I want a bed! I want a bed! I want a bed!
Sad thing is, even though a lot of the characters did have their own personality traits, they were just kinda meh. I mean, Jamie was a stereotypical jock-like kid who didn't give a crap about his schoolwork. Joni was your standard fuss budget of a housewife. Harriet has a crush on Jamie and is poking her nose in places it doesn't belong. And Brandon is annoying as all get out because he got his promotion from being a total suck-up. I mean, outside of Vicky, who admittedly was the drawing point of the show, the only family member that really shows an interesting personality is Ted, and that's mainly from the techno jargon he babbles on about concerning Vicky, which Joni has a traditional response to.
I think the problem is an intermodular distortion of the secondary harmonics in the half-wave rectifier, which controls her speech synthesizer unit.
That makes sense.
I've heard worse catchphrases. One thing I have to laugh at concerning the show looking back on it is that given that it was made for younger audiences, it's amazing just how much they got away with showing how much Ted and Joan were hot to trot for one another.
I'd be relieved if you were here at home. I'd know what kind of doll you were working on nights.
Teenagers aren't into neatness.
But I am, and I'm no teenager.
Thank goodness. I prefer dealing with an old established firm.
Seriously, those two could give Gomez and Morticia a run for their money. The production value was definitely cheap, not just with the green screen effects, but in the casting as well. It seems like every time they needed someone to play a one-shot character, they went to Danny Wells. Yes, that Danny Wells.
Chicken heaven. Would you with the...
You got your wings, your legs, your thighs, your breasts, you and a couple of lips.
My set! My set!
It's styrofoam. How much could it cost to fix?
Wow, well, there's no money in the budget for styrofoam.
Or for guest stars, apparently. Though for what it's worth, they did occasionally get some different guest stars, like F Troop's Ken Berry, Marsha Wallace, and even...
Weighing at 247 pounds, Jesse the Body Ventura!
I see your little girl's a wrestling fan.
And to think, after the prestige of being a show like this, he still went back to insulting Vince McMahon at ringside. The budget is probably why Brandon's wife Bonnie was gone from the show after the second season, as Edie McClurg left for the role of Mrs. Poole on Valerie. She was replaced by Brandon's sister Ida May, played by Alice Ghostly, whose character trait was that she supposedly knew everybody.
Ronnie and Nancy? You mean,
Who else? He's sweet, but he keeps nodding off in his food.
Oh yeah, she gets to have lunch with the President and First Lady. I'd be happy if Mars Girl just acknowledged my existence at Akon. Life is so fair. They did make some changes, like by the second season, making Joni Jamie's substitute teacher at school so that Ted could make Vicky a student and experiment with how she'd interact with other kids. And they did at least try to come up with some clever explanation as to how Vicky could grow up and change in conjunction with Tiffany getting older.
how can a robot grow?
Oh, simple, hon. I just extend the telescopic joints of her titanium skeleton, and then I alter her electrogel density.
That makes sense.
For what it's worth, by the third season, the writers at least started to be a little more creative with what they could do with a robot character. For example, there's when Vicky got her circuits fried from a power surge and started magnetizing everything and making it look like the house was haunted. And unfortunately, they couldn't afford to bring in Ernie Hudson. Sad. Or when she had a hologram generator installed and Jamie made the Brindles think the Martians were coming.
You should have been here a minute ago, Mr. Brindle. A little green man beamed down from the little saucer and ran into the bushes.
I'll get my camera.
I ain't interested unless the alien is furry and sarcastic. Or Robin Williams. Then Ted creates an artificial emotions program that ends up falling in love with Vicky.
Oh, Les, you really know how to turn a girl's head.
Soon we'll be hearing the pitter-patter of little software around the house.
The fanfic that would have sprung from that if this came out today. We even get an evil twin story where Ted builds another robot named Vanessa with the intent of replacing Vicky. Geez, you treat your daughter like you could just throw her out with the trash? And the new robot turns out to be psychotic.
From now on, the robot is the master, and you humans are the slaves.
You may be a lot stronger and faster than I am, but I happen to be a lot smarter than you are.
A human smarter than me? If you'd program me with a sense of humor, I'd laugh in your face.
And yet she does a better job playing the bad seed than Macaulay Culkin did. These were of course mixed in with a bunch of other lesson-shoving episodes, mainly involving anti-drug, alcohol, and gang messages over the final 2 seasons, and after the run ended, the show really faded into obscurity. None of the main cast outside of Edie McClurg really seemed to get any other major roles for a long time after this, except for Emily Schulman appearing in the movie Troop Beverly Hills, and Tiffany Brissett being in a show called Equal Justice. In fact, Brissett gave up acting after that role and apparently went into nursing. Dick Christie appears to have caught the acting bug again recently, appearing in a 2009 episode of Breaking Bad, and has now snagged a role on The Bold and the Beautiful. Jerry Suprian has really fallen on hard times recently. He was reportedly robbed by a stripper that he was dating at age 18, and now lives in homeless shelters that he volunteers at. As for the show itself, Yeah, it's pretty stupid upon further review. But is it one of the worst shows ever? I don't know if I can go that far after a bunch of the god-awful crap I've reviewed here. Still, just about all of the gags on the show are incredibly goofy, and pretty much everything else is stock plots and storylines from just about every family sitcom of the time. Still, they at least tried a concept that was something different and attempted to run with it. To be honest, I'm pretty shocked that Disney hasn't used this concept for one of their tween coms, though they did do a series of movies in the late 80s called Not Quite Human, which were actually based off a series of books that came out at the same time as Small Wonder. Meanwhile, the first 2 seasons of this show have been released to DVD, though the second is available through online sales only. You might get a chuckle at just how ridiculous the concept and execution of it is, if you dare to give it a try. And I'll admit it does feel kind of good to get back in this chair again, but I don't know. This was a softball. Can I ever get back to reviewing stuff that's really bad? I feel like I'm gonna have to ease myself into this. I probably might need to review a treasure for the next episode, if I could find anything. I might need some help. See you next time on TV Trash.